Good evening. Hope everybody's doing well. Everybody good? Can you hear me? All righty. Welcome, everybody. Well, we're already at Zoom session 10. We've had our spring break, and I hope everybody had a big time. I think I went in and graded every day, but it was nice for y'all to have some time off. So I did keep up over the break here. So let me read the stars of the week, the things that caught my eye. All right, here we go. LaShonda talked about don't talk about salary and benefits during the hiring process. That's a great point. You don't make that decision, and whatever you tell them, they'll expect it to come true. There's a lot of factors in salary: experience, certification, local bonuses. I told the story last night. I had a teacher that was mad because she thought it was an IQ test. When I asked her if she wanted to be paid over 10 months or 12 months, she thought she got the same on 12 months. And no, if you take your 10-month pay over 12, you get less every month. She didn't like that. And so that was a good point. That was a good one, LaShonda. Don't talk about that. She also pointed out in one of her posts about hiring on substantive and procedural due process. You got to ask the same questions to every candidate. And you got to ask them in the same order. The same people have to ask the same questions. Now, again, I told the story last night. I was on a hiring committee recently at Gardner Webb, and we have a list of questions and we pick. Now, if we go through the list of 3 people who come in for interviews and we don't hire anybody, the next round we ask different questions, but each round for that same position, you got to ask the same questions in the same order. Let me share my screen. I don't think I pulled it up, but I'll pull it up right quick. Under tonight's content, I've got interview questions. And when I open this one up and it says 154 questions, you say, oh my Lord, you're going to, no, you need to have a master list. Sometimes your district will have one and you pick 6 or 8 questions that you're going to ask. But the idea is rotate. Don't ask the same questions every time for every round. If we're doing a 4th grade teacher, let's say, and we got 3 people in, we got to ask all 3 of those. But next time when we're doing maybe a 6th grade teacher, we got a different position open, we should rotate our questions because people will try to find out what the questions are. So I was in one recently, and there was a person who had a candidate that was a favorite that was ex officio to the committee. And when her candidate came in, you could tell the candidate was answering the questions before we could even get them asked. Now, this is a person that never worked in public school and has no clue about the law, but I suspect that she probably sent the candidate a list of the questions that we were going to ask because we couldn't even get the questions out, and she was just rattling the answers right off. And they were fairly complex and long questions. Well, there was a person that was there who went off script and asked 2 questions that weren't on the list. And it was like the person was looking down and around and looked over at the person that had sent him the question. She would have been a very good poker player. The candidate was being interviewed was like, well, that wasn't on the list of questions you gave me. And of course, the person was angry that gave the questions. We're going to have to ask the same questions of the other candidates. She couldn't answer the questions she didn't have on the list. And so that's why you need to make sure that when candidates come in that you haven't shared the questions with them. That's against the law. That even if you got a favorite, you do not share the questions with them. If you're a part of the interview team, and for every different position, you rotate through the questions so that you don't have the same ones. But the procedural part of this is the substantive part is we have a list of questions. The procedural part is don't tell people what the questions are and ask the same questions in the same order of all the candidates for the same position. That's how due process works on hiring. That sounds trivial, but you'd be amazed at how many times people don't do that and they get sued. Glenda talked about allowing teachers to volunteer for extracurricular duties, the supervision schedule. That's a fairly good idea, but here's the problem with that. I'm always going to volunteer for the easiest stuff. And that won't go well over long periods of time. You need to be careful that you assign the worst ones, that you don't let people sign the quickest ones get the easiest jobs every time. For example, we got two things happening this evening. We've got a ball game and we got a club meeting. The ball game's going to last into the night. The club meeting's going to be over in 15 minutes. You got to make sure that that the same people don't sign up for the 15-minute ones every time, and then you have to assign somebody to be there for 4 games, same site, where they start at 5 o'clock and don't end until midnight with 4 basketball games. So it's all the activities aren't equitable. You got to monitor that, because some people will always volunteer for the easiest ones if you do that. It's a good idea in theory, but in practice, not so much. Tommy did an excellent fundraising checklist, for checklist. I like that checklist that he had on fundraising. It was a quick and dirty. Make sure you go through all of those. You want to look at his post on fundraising. And he made a good point about the budget. If you don't know what you can spend money on, don't guess. Ask somebody. I like that one. Glenda said her district is offering a child care component for employee assistance. The only thing worse than having child care is when it quits, because the parents will revolt. If your district wants to get into that's up to them. I inherited a child care and after school care program, and I hired young ladies from the local community college, and it went pretty well, but it was a bear. But if your district is running one, and that's a wonderful benefit for parents, but sometimes I've seen that backfire. But my point is unless you inherit it, don't get into the child care business. It's a separate. It's another whole job in itself. Tremaine talked about going the extra mile for candidates. In terms of finding out information and doing all that you can during the initial hiring process. The more questions you can answer, the better off you'll be. Brandon shared the Guilford County hiring protocol. I liked it. It was a great example of both substantive and procedural due process, but mostly just substantive. It's a great example of what the substance of a hiring protocol should be. Megan talked about Title IX complaints. Make sure you follow the protocol, the substantive due process, whatever it is that you follow that. Tanya talked about her principle. Would rather spend money on people than programs in terms of the budget. The only problem with that is when you hire people, there's an expectation of continued employment, and you have to commit that money every time. Tommy talked about how much, when he looked at the budget, he was surprised about how much salaries are. Salaries are very, salaries are expensive, and they're an ongoing expense, and it's more than just the salary, the benefits, and all the other things, the retirement. Tanya talked about that, and I support the notion that it's a people business, and people can build relationships that programs can't. The problem is the continuing funding stream is difficult at times, and you got to factor that in. A lot of that. What did we call that money during COVID? What was that? What's the
ESSER.
ESSER funds?
ESSER.
Problem with ESSER funds is that they run out, and then
we've lost 3 teachers. We've lost 3 teachers in the last, support staff in the last month.
Yeah.
Behavior support,
yeah,
instructional technology facilitator, and our social worker.
Yep. Yeah. And see, the problem is you make a commitment to provide those services, and then those people are gone. That's the downside of using discretionary money to hire people. It's discretionary. It doesn't last. I would caution you about that. I mean, when the money comes like ESSER, you hire the people, but when you've got local money or you've got some funds, and you know that they're going to run out, I would think twice about hiring people. It's a good idea to the services they provide, but it will end. Tanya made a good point. If you act as a servant leadership, that promotes followership. The first tenet of leadership is followership. If you, it doesn't matter where you want to go. If you by yourself, you're just, you're just, the village idiot out in the wilderness. The people have got to follow you. And the way they do that is if you're a servant leader. That, Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. I'm not asking you to wash anybody's feet, but do as they do. Always lend a hand and be involved. That promotes people to follow you. Melody made a good connection with her assistant superintendent when we talked about employee assistance. And that's kind of the whole idea of going out and talking with these people. They know who you are and they recognize your face. You get known in the district. That was very good. Glenda did a very thorough assessment inventory and made the point that you got to follow up. It's just not documenting. The fire marshal wanted their people to spend $300 on the data sheet. The principal initially didn't want to do that, but then realized that if the fire marshal suggests something, you might ought to do it. If you have a problem later and the fire marshal says, "Well, I told them to do this," and they decided not to, that won't go well for you. So the point of that is when the fire marshal comes and says you need to have X, Y, and Z, you better find the money for X, Y, and Z, because although they can't require it, that's the first thing they're going to refer to if something goes wrong. So she made a good point with that when her principal broke over and spent the $300. LaShonda made a point and reminded us that your district has approved vendors that you should be doing business with, especially if you're doing fundraising. They should be on an approved list. And again, ask somebody. Ask them who they've worked with in your district before, and put a call in and find out how it went with them. That's just a really good one. And you also need to look at your potential profit. You can do a lot of work if you're selling low cost items and not make a lot of money, but you got to match your items with your community. I noticed a sign in my neighborhood when I was at the big house this weekend that the local high school in Lake Norman, they're having a mattress sale for a fundraiser. Now, those mattresses range in price from $500 to $1,000. How many of you work in a community where people can afford a fundraising item that costs between $500 and $1,000? You would say, well, I can make a lot of money selling mattresses, but not if you don't sell any mattresses. you might be better off with those $10 business cards where they can get a percentage off if they go to buy one, get one free at the Subway or something like that. Now, you got to sell a lot of them cards to make $500, but I suspect you can sell more cards in some communities than you can $500,000 mattresses. So again, those are all things. Match that. I inherited a fundraiser at a high school that didn't make any money, that lost money, and they were mad that I wouldn't continue it. And I was like, you do understand that the purpose of this is to make money. Oh, it's a community event. Well, but I can't pay for your community event. That's the thing. Some things, their time comes and goes on fundraising. Even the North Meck barbecue finally came to an end, because if you have to hire it done, and you don't have enough, community volunteers to run a barbecue like that, paying for it, you can't come out. It makes no money. Now, I know that your fundraising is to build community spirit in places, but you can't pay for that. The idea of fundraisers is to raise funds. You got to be careful on that. Amy talked about dismissal procedure because they're having some construction at her building. They're having to dismiss buses 4 at a time, and students are having to stay in the room. that can be a nightmare. I'll caution you on that one. We had a problem with buses when I was the principal in Charlotte, and we had to hold our, and if they're not used to that, the students, when the bell rings, they want to all run out. That becomes a problem. But here's the problem: even if you manage it, remember that notion of your ratio of faculty to students for adequate supervision. Here's the problem you get into releasing buses. All right, all your teachers are still in the rooms, and you release 4 buses at a time. You don't have adequate supervision on the bus lot because all your teachers aren't out there. So what you got to do is make sure that the people who don't have a last period class that are on planning, you got to get them involved, helping you to make sure that you've got adequate supervision in the hallways and on the lots if all of your teachers aren't coming out with the kids at the same time. You would think that it wouldn't be an issue, but it is. You don't want a bunch of kids on the bus lot and you've only got 2 teachers, because 2 are, in the hallway supervising the hallway. Just think about it. You've got 4 classes. You need 2 of those teachers supervising the hallway and 2 out there, but you got 4 classrooms of kids and only 2 teachers. You've got that problem either in the hallway or at the bus lot, that you've only got half as many teachers as you need for adequate supervision. So you got to pull some extra people that don't have class that last period and put a couple of them on hall duty and a couple extra ones out there on the bus lot at the same time. It sounds like a minor point, but that when you're moving kids is when something bad's likely to happen. One of them get hurt or a fight to occur or something like that. Somebody gets hurt. So you got to pull, if you're not going to release everybody where teachers are moving with the kids at the same time and you got adequate supervision, you need to make sure that you pull some extra people in if you have to do a staggered release on your buses like that. I found that out the hard way. Megan talked about their building. They've converted a middle school. Is that it, Megan, to a elementary school? And they've got multiple buildings and they have to escort the little kids. That's part of it. That's for adequate supervision. You've got a duty to act to protect those kids. And so I know it's aggravating to have to walk kids, here and there and everywhere, but you got to do it, especially if they have to go outside. I mean, we repurpose old buildings from time to time, and this is just part of what you have. But that's if a kid got lost or hurt, that would be nonfeasance. You had a duty to act and didn't. So buildings sometimes determine our supervision schedules and what we have to do. Tremaine talked about surveying teachers for what they wanted for their, in terms of the budget. Problem with that is who follows up to make sure that whose responsibility it is to speak for those things when it comes to the budget time. That's a good idea as a part of what goes to the school improvement team that's helping design the budget and the principal. But make sure that the AP that sent it out, what happens if they're not part of the school improvement team? Then there's got to be a follow through. Just sending the survey and collecting it, there's got to be that other step of how that data gets to that wish list gets to the school improvement team. I've seen that happen before. I've seen principals that did the list, and then when it came time, that list never got to the people making the decision. So you got to follow up on that. LaShonda talked about the principal kind of makes a mock budget at her school, and that starts the conversation at the school improvement team. I like that. You don't start from scratch. However, you got to make sure that everybody understands it's just a proposal. Some principals walk in and say, "Here's the budget." That you do yourself a lot of harm by doing that. Make sure if you have done the needs assessment in your school and you say, "Here's what I propose," that you understand that it's not set in stone. That it's a good starting point, but it's just a starting point. Alicia talked about employee assistance has mental health and counseling and family services. That's that can be part of it in your district, and you need to know that, because as I told you before, I had a teacher with a substance abuse problem, and because she was receiving counseling for that, I couldn't hire even a long-term sub in her place when she was out on leave getting treatment. You need to be aware of those kinds of things. Alicia talked about ID badges, that they probably didn't enforce it too much because it's a small school. Again, if you knew they were supposed to, and something ever occurs, that's one of those nonfeasance things. I know you got to pick your battles, but you're understanding that you take a risk when there's a policy and you're not enforcing it. Tommy talked about, he was surprised looking at the budget about how much salaries take. I've talked about that before. About 85% of our budget goes to salaries. So there's not as much money floating around in schools as you think there are. And Liz, who was with us last night, she pointed out that in an IEP meeting how cold and uncaring that the EC staff and the LEA rep were with the parents and the kid. There might have been a history there, but they missed an opportunity to create a relationship there. Again, understanding that those meetings are collaborative, and you need to try to work with parents and with students at those meetings. So that's what caught my eye this week. It took a little extra time because we've been out for a week. That's what caught my eye on work this week. Again, I don't require you, but you can go back and look at these folks' posts. There's some really good ones. All right, so let's talk about where we are. Let's look at our weekly schedule. Let me share my screen. All right. All right, we're already over on the last half of March. Today is the 20th. So we've got one more week. And then, so next week, I'll talk to you about the case study, our fourth and final case study. Then you'll have a week off from me where you can get that together. So we'll talk about it next week. We'll talk about it. Tonight, I want to talk about the CAP. You should be ending up the skip pretty soon. Don't be spending a lot of time doing peer reviews. I mean, just, if they need your help at this stage, then you're not going, I'm not sure how much help you can be, but be quick on your reviews, pick up the pace, get that skip done so that we can move on to the CAP. As I told you, the CAP requires you to have teachers in the building, and requires you to be able to do some survey and some interview observation work. And you need to get that done. Easter break will be coming up. Next thing you know, we'll be in test review. And if you get to May and you haven't started on your CAP, it may be hard to get it done. And then this summer, by the time summer school starts, school's over. It's the third week in May. Not a lot of opportunity to get that. And, if you can at least knock out the first two tasks of the CAP this semester, you'll be so much better off entering into the summer. Remembering that the SIOP is no new work, but it's chiseling it down, carving it out, and there's 6 tasks on it, and you got to finish your competency folio. And we're going to talk about it after we get through talking about the CAP. So, pick up the pace, go quickly. Don't spend a lot of time waiting on peer reviews. Just move fast. All right, so let's talk about the CAP. As I told you, the very first night that I met you last semester, we work on gradual release, what we used to call intentional abandonment, that would give you less and less each time on your evidence work, that you would step forward, we'd step back. So remembering that we didn't even give you a template for the skip, we won't give you one for the CAP either. So instead of templates, what we have for you now is under CAP materials. I have 2 North Carolina examples and 2 South Carolina examples. You can look at those. One's really good and one's just good, each of those. So you have your task in the prompt. There's no template. There's no helpful hints. There's none of that. There's examples for you to look at. And here's the place where you can post them for review. All right, so let's look at what the CAP is. Now, again, the most important thing is the very first thing, is that you understand that these are the 5 areas that you have to look at from your South Carolina survey, teacher survey, or your North Carolina teacher working conditions survey. You've got to do empowerment, which is teacher leadership, school leadership, facilities, resources, and time. Now, you can add others to that, like if you want to do managing student conduct, that's fine, but you can't substitute. These 5 must be there, and they must be represented in all 4 tasks of the CAP. You can't just look at them in task 1 and then jump on something else in task 2. No, these are the content all the way through. These are the 5 that you will be looking at. So you display them. You pull up and you display the data from these 5 areas from your survey, whether it's a teacher working condition or the teacher survey in South Carolina. So let's do that. I'm going to walk you in to look at that. All right. LaShonda, where do you work?
I'm in Guilford County.
All right, where are you at, LaShonda? Is LaShonda muted?
Looked like she froze up. I think she went away and came back.
All right. Tremaine, you're in Guilford. Where are you?
I'm actually in Sumter County School District in South Carolina.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a senior moment there.
You're fine.
All right. Somebody give me I'll just pull one at random here. Oh, let's see where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to Gibson. I'm going to go to Gibsonville Elementary School. This is the one I like right here because it's color coded. All right. So as I pull this one up, here's my data on time. I would have this whole thing right here. I just copy and paste it. All right. What do we notice now? So this is what we do. We take the one from time, facilities and resources there together, teacher leadership, that's empowerment, and school leadership. There they are right there. We take and cut these sections out. Now, that's prompt 1 of task 1. We display our data. Now, in task 2, what does it say to do? A needs assessment based on the results. So what that means is, let me go back to that one. Move that out of the way. When we display our data in task 1, prompt 1, we're going to highlight the things that are really good at our school and really bad. All right, so looking at time, we got a couple of things that are pretty good. We got 2 greens. We got teachers have time available to collaborate and protected from duties. All right, but unfortunately, we got one down here in orange or as well, but which is bad. The non-instructional time provided for teachers in my school is sufficient. Non-instructional time. That means planning time. And so 47. So that would be the item from time that would go on our needs assessment. And we would ask that question exactly the same way. We can use Qualtrics or you can use Survey Monkey or whatever. You need to survey your teachers about the lowest item or lowest couple of items in these 5 areas. So your needs assessment will have no more than 10 questions, minimum of 5, no more than 10. Now, is there another one on here that's really low? I would probably add the next one as well, because it's just 52. It's just barely out of the caution zone. I would add D and E, the non-instructional time and efforts are made to minimize routine paperwork. Those would be my 2 needs assessment questions that I would survey back out to teachers. Basically, what you're saying to them is this still a problem at our school, or were you just mad at the principal when you filled out the survey 2 years ago? See, part of the problem is this survey is 2 years old, and you may have changed principals by then, or things may have changed. So we're going to confirm this data. Let me say that again. We're going to confirm the validity of this data by resurveying those 2 items from time. All right. We move down to facilities. Now you'll notice the top half of this section is about resources. They're all pretty good, but we still are going to pick one.
Dr. Lamb, I have a quick question about that.
Yes.
With North Carolina, they're currently doing the 2024 survey.
Yeah.
Do we also have to send out another survey to confirm as well?
No. That's why I said we're doing this. No, we're doing this one. We don't worry about that one. The data won't be in on that one for months.
Okay.
We're doing the 2022 survey. We're doing this one. That's a good question. All right. So looking at this one, they're all pretty good, but I'd pick the one that's 82 here on teachers have adequate space to work productively. I'd pick that one on facilities, and on resources, I'd pick teachers have sufficient access to broad range. I just one each on those. So now we've got 4 questions on our survey. And then teacher leadership, I would pick, you got 3 here that are pretty close. I would definitely pick teachers are trusted to make sound decisions. I would probably do that one and the one above it. These 2 are pretty similar. I'd pick those 2 maybe. And then on school leadership, let's see, I would pick one school improvement team, 5, there's the school faculty record. I'd probably pick that one, and I'd probably pick this one right here. Teachers feel comfortable, because that's just the 80. I'd pick that one, and I'd probably pick this one. I'd pick the 80 and the 82 on this one. So you got, what's that, 7 or 8 questions? That's what you survey back out to your teachers, and you get the results of those. That's your needs assessment. So that's how you do task 1, prompt 1, and prompt 2. Anybody have any questions on how to pull your data? Now, South Carolina, best thing to do is go to your principal, and they'll have this survey data already collated for you. You can go to the report card, but it's kind of scattered. But your principal has it in aggregate for South Carolina people. All right. Let me move that out of the way. All right. So that's task 1, prompt 1, and prompt 2. Now, here's why I was talking about. You're going to collect some qualitative data now. What is qualitative? Qualitative is interview, observation, and documents. All right. What I'd like for you to do is talk to teachers and ask them, why are those things, those 8 or 9 items that you identified, why are they a problem, and what can we do to fix them? Now I'm going to give you an example of why you need to do that. And you would chart this. Here's the number. Here's what my survey had when I resurveyed it back out. And then here's what, when I went and asked people, here's what they said about this particular thing. Let's go back to this one under time. All right. The non-instructional time, that's planning time, provided for teachers in my school is sufficient. Now, if you didn't go ask somebody, you would say, well, what they want more planning time put in the schedule, but we can't do that. What happens to class size? Every time we take a teacher out of the teaching rotation for that block of time, it makes the class size go up. Now, you know, every kid's got to be with a teacher every hour, right? So, but when we went out and talked to them, here's what they said. They said, oh, we got enough time in the schedule, built into the schedule. We just never get to take it because we're covering classes. Heard that before? So the solution to that problem, if we just looked at our quantitative survey data, would be to add more planning time into the master schedule. But that would not solve our problem. It doesn't matter how much time we've got if I never get to take it. So what the solution to the problem would be is hiring substitutes. That's why you go ask people, why is this a problem and what can we do to fix it? That's the qualitative in two. That's why I said you got to have teachers in the building to do this one, because you got to survey them all and you need to go and interview several. Qualitative and quantitative. The quantitative part, this is a sequential explanatory design. The quantitative parts of the survey, it comes first. As a result, we go out and we say 90% of the teachers still say they don't have enough planning time. Why do you think that is? Well, because we're always covering classes. Well, what can we do to fix it? We need to hire some subs. Need to pay them. Now, I'm going to stop and rant for a minute here, as if I don't do that all the time. What happens to unused sub funds in a school district? Anybody know? They become part of the general fund at the central office and they can be used for anything. Generally, the central office rides on that money. They go to conferences, they do fact-finding missions or whatever. Some districts don't try too hard to get substitutes, because if you hire them, you got to pay them, and then that there ain't any of that free money floating around from unused sub funds. And some schools are bad about that as well, about not wanting to hire subs. They're going to charge the teachers. They're going to take their sick days, but they don't want to hire subs. They want to divide them up. That's a bad practice, folks. I'm going to tell you that right now. As future administrators, I don't care what you have to do. Avoid that at all costs. If somebody's out, get a substitute. And if you have to run classes after school where you help train and work with your subs, what your expectations are, then you need to do that. But don't get in the habit of having teachers on planning cover classes or divide them up among the team. That is a terrible, terrible thing to do to teachers. You wonder why teachers are leaving the profession? This is near the top of the list, folks. This is just dumbassery. You're shooting yourself in the foot to do this. There's a reason why we hire and vet subs and why we pay them. And you need to make sure that you're doing everything you can to get and keep good subs. You treat them well. You make sure that when there's faculty appreciation, you treat them like the rest of your faculty. You get you some good quality subs and you treat them like and train them up like you want them to be. Don't just be mad at them when they don't do the things you want. And you support those subs because they take care of your teachers. This might be the dumbest thing that you can do as a school administrator, is not get and keep good subs. If you have any input, you need to get this done. You need to get this done. It is a big issue. Wanda's got a question mark up, got a hand raised. Wanda?
Hey, Dr. Lamb. So, at our school, we're paid for a class if we have to sub. So, like,
Excellent.
I have
That's what I'm talking about.
period planning. I have 4-period planning. So sometimes that's an extra $40 for me 2 or 3 times
There
a
you
month.
go. See, I love that. I mean, use your own people for subs, but you got to pay them. Thank you for that. That's wonderful. Thank you for that. See, that's what I'm talking about. You know, you may have to be creative, pay your own people rather than
Dr.
just
Lamb.
expect them to work for free. I love that idea. Yes.
So with CMS being so big and us sharing a pool of subs through Smart Find, and then we have, because we've had several occasions where we had to disperse the kids because we couldn't find subs. Is that,
You know, if you cultivate subs, even in CMS, I know they'll come. Sometimes you can get people to come to different schools that won't come to others if you treat them well, and you make sure that when you pass the shirts out that they get one and that you're looking out for them. I had one at Olympic, Roger Palmer, that came every day. I told him, I'll find the money. If I have to use my money, you come every day. This is your job. There'll be somebody out, and if there's not, I'm gonna pay you anyway. I'll find something for you to do.
so I guess with the dispersal part, like what was just said about having to cover classes, that can't apply to elementary, can it?
Having to cover classes, well, but what they do in elementary is they'll disperse them sometimes.
Or
They'll
they
But
pull
we
the
divide
don't get paid
TAs,
extra.
or they pull the TAs.
Yeah, or they pull the TAs. They'll take your TA.
Mhm.
I mean, there's any number of stupid things that schools do. They're endless. I'm amazed at the dumb that you know. It's like everybody fell and hit their head. This is the biggest issue in terms of teacher satisfaction. The biggest one. And I'm amazed that people don't seize the opportunity to turn these lemons into lemonade. I'm amazed that people don't understand how big a deal this is to teachers. If you want to be a hero for teachers, you know, we talk about being a champion for kids. Well, sometimes you have to be a hero for teachers so that they can be champions for kids. But if you treat your teachers badly, if you pull their TAs, if you pull them out, if you send an extra 10 kids to their room, they'll be looking to work somewhere where they don't disrespect them and treat them that poorly and undervalue them. You know, I'm hard on teachers, but you got you got to treat them well. Now, I was famous for petting mine, buying them fried chicken, shirts, you know, whatever. But I had high expectations for them as well. That we did everything for kids, but what more could you do for a kid than have a good teacher in the room with them every day? This whole substitute and running short, this is the biggest issue facing schools today, and it's the biggest issue of teacher satisfaction or dissatisfaction going. You got to get on this one, folks. You can't just say, well, we didn't have any subs, too bad, so sad. No, you do what you can do. If you have to raise money to find, you know, to have to pay Mr. Palmer every now and then when you didn't have, rarely in a big high school will you not have somebody out. But if it happens, you just have to bite the bullet and pay. You know, you do what you can to make sure that you keep good subs. You look after them. All right, we still got several hands up. Randy, hadn't called on you.
Yeah, it was just kind of like what Tanya was saying. At my school, if a sub doesn't pick up, because I'm right next to Jeffrey in Union County, and we use a portal, and you know, you put it in and hope, you know, fingers crossed someone picks it up. But the moment that a TA enters a room to be a sub, they immediately get paid the sub pay instead of just a TA pay. And they document it like that, and so kind of giving them that incentive. We know what you're pulling out of your schedule, and you're covering this class for us. So kind of like we appreciate it, and they pay them the sub pay or whatever it is
On top of their regular salary.
I want to probably say no. I think for that day they would just be a sub. I think that would be a question I would have to ask them. I'm not. That's a good question.
Well, I'm sure that Union County's got people smarter than me. But one of the things that you've got to be cautious about that is double dipping. And that TAs are on a 37.5 hour timesheet. And if they go over the hours on their timesheet, you have to pay them overtime. So I'm guessing they've got that figured out somehow. They got to be smarter than me. But I got beat with that stick 32 years ago. I got beat with that stick. I was in Burke County, principal at the time, and we had been double dipping our TAs where they would TA during the day and then drive the bus. And then a ruling came down from the state labor board that should have been overtime pay rather than just standard bus driver pay because it was past their 37 and a half hours. And so the district didn't have the money to pay them all the back overtime. So we had to do without TAs the last month of the school year. Yep. They basically furloughed them the last month, paid them their regular salary, and they didn't have to come to work for a month rather than paying them the overtime. So I hope your district is smart in what they're doing with that. Our district wasn't. But that's what happens when you hire a, assistant superintendent for finance from one of the other state agencies that hadn't ever been a school person and made that mistake. And that happened 32 years ago this year in 1992 in Burke County schools. We double dipped our TAs and not understanding that they had to be compensated at overtime, not the standard pay for those hours past their regular TA duties. So what they might be doing, I'm just speculating here, they might be taking them off the payroll that day for their 37 and a half hours, adding them on the sub payroll at a higher rate. But the problem with that is if the differential isn't that much, it's not really a bonus for them unless it's significant enough pay differential from their regular salary and sub pay to make it worth their while to do that. Unless they're eventually going to become a residency teacher and it can work as some kind of a clinical hours for them or something like that. There's also a lot of TAs are doing clinicals now. Doing residency teacher and going to become a full certified teacher. If you can identify those, you can use them and you could pay them a little more, but they could also count them as clinical hours. That's down in the weeds of undergraduate education, and I am not an expert on that. I just stayed at the Holiday Inn Express last night. Unfortunately, I've had to get involved with the clinical part of student teachers since we don't have a person doing that right now at Gardner Webb. So, but I can tell you that there's some things that you can do there, but you got to be careful. Make sure you understand that they are hourly employees on a 37 and a half hour a week contract. And you have to be careful of that. But that's a great idea is to use them if they can be compensated. If it's the same room. Now, the problem you get into is if you pull them out of somebody else's room, then you place that extra burden on that teacher. That's not good. LaShonda, you got one? And then we'll get back to Tanya and Wanda.
So to elaborate on that, that's exactly what we're going through at my school now. The kindergarten teachers have been fussing because all of the assistants are being pulled on a daily basis because we haven't been having teacher work days, so they have been pulled. So it's mass chaos. And then we have 2 interventionists that pull students for MTSS tier 2 and tier 3 all day. They haven't been able to pull those children because they're being pulled every day because we're so short staffed, and the saying is we can't get any subs, so they're being pulled. I got
it, LaShonda, pardon me for interrupting you. I got to wonder how hard you're trying to get subs if you're doing that. I mean, what is your district doing? Are they up in the pay, or are they, how hard are they really trying? You got to wonder on that. I mean, I'd have to see evidence that if you'll pay people, you can get people to work. If you will pay people, you can get people to work. You may have to, but they're what they're saying is we can't find anybody willing to work for what we're willing to pay. We can find plenty of people if we're willing to pay. But again, that unused money, central office gets to ride on that money. So a lot of times they have a disincentive to work hard and pay more for subs, because then they don't have any discretionary money to go to. And it's funny how all those conferences they just have to go to, the best ones are always in Las Vegas or New Orleans. It's funny how that works.
California.
Yeah, exactly. Someplace warm in the wintertime. It's amazing how that always happens. But you can find people to work if you want to. You just don't have enough want to. That's what I'm talking about. We're not really trying hard enough. But now a absolute no is pulling kindergarten TAs. Those kids, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. You should never pull a kindergarten TAs. That's just a legal nightmare. I'll just tell you that right now. Even when I did reduce class size at Oak Hill and ran, and ran the Oak Hill project, which was a replica of the STAR project from Tennessee. I did that 35 years ago. Even I was smart enough to know you couldn't pull your TAs out of kindergarten. I pulled them out of first, second, and third, but you can't pull them out of kindergarten. You can't do that. I cashed them in and went reduced class size, but you can't do that with kindergarten. That's a legal nightmare, folks. You shouldn't do that. I'm just amazed at the dumb things that we're doing now. That we're just asking to be sued. We're begging people to sue us. Tanya, you got your hand up again, or is your hand just still up?
Just quickly, we have, I don't know if people have this, but in the last 2 years, we've been able to have a building-based sub that comes in every day.
Yeah.
And so that person gets pulled wherever they need to be pulled to cover IEP meetings for teachers or whatever. If, they just are there, whether there's somebody, and there's always somebody that's going to be out.
Yeah, so, exactly. And you as a principal, you just have to understand if you just happen to the roll of the dice, and one day you don't have anybody out, you got to pay them anyway. And you factor that into your local budget, that you may take the hit on that every now and then, but you get you some good ones that'll come. But even in these call-in systems, there's certain schools. When my wife was at Davidson IB, they never had a problem. I mean, and they had people they just pick up the phone and call, but they'd only work there. Mayor of Huntersville was the sub for them when Jill Swain was the mayor there. I mean, if you build a relationship, you can get some subs, and if your district will pay, they can get them. They're just not willing to pay enough to get them. I hate to say that, but it's just the truth. Wanda, you got your hand up again?
Yes, I do. So I work at Northwest Guilford High School, and we have close to 100 teachers. So for Guilford County, we're coming up on spring break, which is next week. So the principal already know as of even of today, just today, she already have 20 teachers out. And so my question is, at what point or could a principal deny people from taking time off if it causes a deficit across the school? So how do you handle that?
All right. So here's the state law. You can't take annual leave day when kids are in the building. So that means you're either taking a sick day or you're taking a personal day. You get 2 personal days a year, 2. All right. Now, and you have to give a 2-week notice on the personal days. All right. And there has to be a reason. And on sick leave, you can simply say, all right, we got to have a doctor's note. And you can make it, you can, again, now I'm being the bad guy. I was being good to teachers a minute ago, and now I'm being bad. But, I would establish the policy is, you can't take annual leave. I need a 2-week notice on personal days. I need a doctor's note on sick leave. And so it's not about approving. I mean, people can call in sick, but they got to understand that you got to provide a doctor's note, or you don't, or your pay is going to be docked that day. If you're willing to lose your pay, and we're not going to grant you a sick day. We're going to take your salary for that day. Then it gets serious. But now on the personal day, 2-week notice, again, you got to have a valid reason. And now those
So
can be denied.
Okay, so the principal makes those rulings. So the principal
What do you
can
mean?
make those
The
rulings.
principal can enforce those. Those are that's state law. North Carolina is a right to work state. It's not a union state. North Carolina is a right to work state. The principal has the power here. The principal can require to take a sick day, but can require a doctor's note. On a personal day, they can require a reason and 2-week notice and a reason, and they can deny it. The principal has that power. That's already in law. That's the principal just enforces the law. Classroom teachers cannot take annual leave when kids are in the building. It's not like, well, I'm going to take an annual leave, what we colloquially refer to as a vacation day. No, you're not. You can't take annual leave if school's in session. Can't do that. You can take a sick day, but then I require a doctor's note. If you don't provide a doctor's note, not only do you not take the sick day, I'm going to take your salary for that day. That's a whole lot more than paying a sub, a whole lot more. That's probably going to be 2 or 3 times what a sub costs if they're willing to do that. And if you do that for 3 days, that's job abandonment. So sometimes you're going to have to hardline some people. But you need to be working on the other end to do all you can to help them, but you can't just let them, flaunt the rules. You got to be that, again, you got to be a champion for kids. And sometimes that means that teachers get caught in the crosshair, but if they don't do the right thing, you got to be the enforcement on them. Yeah. All right, so that's the first 2 tasks of the CAP. The third one is you do a cultural competence audit. Let me share my screen. It's pretty straightforward. And a lot of it's just copy and paste. Measure the level by assessing consumer research such as methods used in task 2 right here. Just like you did in 2, you would go to your school's website, pull the mission and vision. You can do a summarization of school leadership from the teacher working condition surveys, like it says right here. The methods you used in task 2, so you can copy and paste. Teacher quality is measured by experience and certification. That's on the state report card. You pulled that earlier this semester. Remember, in the OMA, parent involvement and support, we've already pulled that to skip, conflict resolution, and student achievement. You've already pulled most of those things. So just put your competence audit, and then in task 4, instead of writing competencies, you don't do that here. You do an action plan, cultural competency, using the same graphic organizer that we always do, where you address each of those items that were on your needs assessment from those 5 areas. Right there it is. It's real simple. This is not a hard one. The worst mistake students make is they assess these 5 areas right here, and then they jump on something else, or they say, well, leadership's good at our school, I'm gonna substitute. I must see these 5 all the way through. You can add managing student conduct to it if you want to, but you can't substitute one of these. And that's the CAP. But we had a lively discussion tonight. I love that. This is the kind of discussion you need to have with teachers when you go out and interview them about some of these problems. Why is this a problem? What can we do to fix it? That's called a sequential explanatory design. Quantitative first, then from the results of that, you divulge the results of that to the teachers and say, this is a problem. Why is it a problem? What can we do to fix it? And that will make it go really, really well. So that's the CAP. I'll go quickly now. I see our time, but I love the conversations. We got to talk like this more. All right. Under content tonight, what you really need to look at, and I never sit and read PowerPoints. This one from Dr. Griffin Jordan that put together, again, she's principal at City of Medicine in Durham. She has put together a comprehensive PowerPoint for you on what you need to do. It's only 20 slides long, but it's the good stuff, folks. It's the cycle of life here, the circle of life: recruit, hire, evaluate, support teachers. And she's got all the things that you need to do right here in a neat 20-slide presentation. Everything you need to know about human resources. So it's always, and if you want to watch her do it, she's on this video right here, and she is special, folks. She is special. You need to watch her. She'll do this one for you. She'll walk you through everything, and you know, she is a first-class lady and a first-class principal. You would love her. And so that's all you really need. Here are our materials. Last thing tonight is make sure that you get started putting your competencies, your artifacts in your competency folio. Let me pull this up. So first thing you do is you go to our class shell and you go to the one that says MSA Handbook and Competency Folio Resources. You open that one up, open-ended, open this document up. And these. All right. Now, so, and then when you get those two documents open, you go to task stream. Remember, you don't go to your DRF portfolio, you go to your folios and web pages. You find yours and you start from the top. You click on communication and it tells you what is owed there. We need one from the app cell, the SIOP, and open-ended. One of them needs to be a digital learning. All right, now you say, well, we didn't do the app cell or SIOP. So you could add an open-ended one there if you wanted to on communication. You say, well, Dale, where would I find that? Well, let's go to the open-ended one here. All right. If you addressed a large or small group of adults, like when you did your presentation of your schedule in task 3 of the OMA, if you met with a group of people there, that would be it. That would be a communication one. If you've got an agenda or a picture of you doing that, that would be an open-ended one. You could do that for this semester because I know you did that. All right, under change management, again, you could do an open-ended one there, and you could say, well, again, you can go back and look at your list of the open-ended ones. Is there something on there that says change management? Let's see that we can think of that you might have done. Right here, conduct a parent meeting group. So if you did one of those parent meetings from long-term, from Skip that we just did, if you did one of those, that'd be change management. If you got a picture of you conducting a parent group meeting, or there's some other ones on here. That's how you find your open-ended ones. Now, let's go on down. Okay, look, OMA and Skip on this one on customer focus. Oh boy. So there should be an artifact, shouldn't there, from the work that you did. So let's go to that document. All right. So let's go right here. So I've got the OMA up on the screen here. All right. Which one was that? That was customer focus. All right. Let's go back to that document, find one for customer focus. All right. Customer focus. What number is that? 5. Let's find a 5 right here. When you did your EC audit from the OMA, copy and paste. There it is, right there. Remember when we did that EC audit on task 1 of the OMA? That's a 5 right there. There it is. Let's see if there's a 5, and there's a 5 down here. Agendas, minutes, correspondence. If you had one of those parent meetings, Right there. There's a 5 down there. Pretty easy, isn't it? You know, that's all you do. One from the skip, one there's the one from the OMA, right there's one from the skip. Easy peasy. And that's what you do. And you just keep on going down the list. Go to the next one, delegation. Okay, one from the skip. Delegation should be number 6. Let's see what that is. From the skip, number 6, right there it is. Pamphlets, flyers, pictures of any of those agendas of those events that you did. Right there it is. So that's how you do that. So again, you do what it tells you, dialogue or inquiry. You could do an open-ended one there if you want to. And go look. If you did something under that, on that, go back to that document. Open-ended dialogue inquiry. Let's see, right there. If you addressed a small group of adults, that would be an open-ended one right there. If you did that, if you got a picture of you doing that. So as you can see, and you just add them, use the attachment button, even if they're pictures, because it'll put a limit if you use. Now, if you've got a PDF document, you'll have to use the text and image bus if you've got a PDF. But if you've got pictures, attached to pictures, this puts a 2 megabyte limit on your pictures. It won't, pictures are too big. And just go through each of these, and then you can, request comments from me. When you request comments, please put them all in there, and then request comments. Don't request comments for every single one. Add 4 or 5, then request. When you request comments, it'll let you choose which ones. It'll let you choose if you want to do like 4 or 5 like this at one time, continue, and then you pick. For me, I'll be on there for y'all. Right here, 12 month, 20 month. I'll be the one for y'all right there. You see, I'm there. It'll have me, and just pick me. Okay. Anybody have any questions on how? Always, and remember, when you come out of task stream, always log out. Even if you're going to go right back in, leave it on that screen. If it times you out, you may be out for a while. That's just one of the quirks of task stream. All right. Is that pretty simple explanation of how you do your competency folio? Make it really quick and easy. I'm all about quick and easy. Stuff doesn't have to be hard. You need to start learning time management routines now. How to meet the requirements that you have, and understand that enough is enough. We can always do better if we had more time. But quick and easy. Just follow the directions. I'll end up tonight with, and again, I apologize for going over time, but we had a lot of discussion and I like that. The number one thing superintendents tell me they want in principals? People that can follow directions. Number one, by a long shot. One of the things that in the doctoral program, one of the problems that we have when we try to evaluate programs is they haven't been implemented with fidelity, is that principals won't follow directions. They're told you need to do X, Y, and Z. They'll do A, B, and C. And then you can't compare. I've got one going on in South Carolina right now. Some schools decided that they just wouldn't give a quarterly this semester. And I'm like, what? Well, the principal said they didn't want to. How can you track the program data from their math program if you didn't give the test? Well, they didn't want to. You can't make this up. I wish I was smart enough to make stuff like this up. They hired you to follow law and policy. Can you follow directions? If it says, report to the superintendent and the police, do you follow the order correctly? Or if it says report to law enforcement and then the superintendent, do you follow the directions? I can't tell you the number of times they call me. Have you called the law? No. Well, hang up. Don't call me. Call the law first, then call me. That's what the law says. Do you not remember that from the last time I had to remind you of that? Where's your report this month? You know, if I'm telling you what, just showing up in life and being able to follow directions is about 90% of people's success. Show up sober and clean clothes every day and follow the directions. Makes life so much easier. People will appreciate you. Just get in the habit of, don't start using that D word, discretion, or I was thinking outside the box. No. You have to understand that there's certain things, law and policy, that you're a law and policy person as a school principal. Your job is to follow the law, follow the policy, make sure that you follow directions well, and you'll be okay. You will be okay. All right. Anything else tonight for the good of the group? Now, next week, we'll talk about our last case study, and we'll cover our facilities material next week. Again, look at Dr. Griffin Jordan's PowerPoint. It's a really good, take you 5 minutes to watch it, and you can get to her point in the program on that video from last semester. She does a good job covering it if you want to see her, but she's a first-class lady. You'll enjoy the time with her. Again, I don't like covering PowerPoints, but if you want,
I have a South Carolina question.
Yes, South Carolina.
You mentioned it briefly when you were talking about the cap. What did you say that you said? But now South Carolina will have to do this because we don't have a teacher working survey.
No, you have a teacher survey and you have a parent survey. They're both in where you go to get your report card, but your principal has them in aggregate. All you have to do is ask them.
Okay.
Last year's surveys. I mean,
last year's surveys in aggregate.
They'll have your surveys in aggregate. Just ask your principal.
And if we have trouble getting that out of my principal, because
you can go pull it out off the state report card. It's just manually to do that. You got to pull it out, but it is in your state report card system. It's in 2 or 3 different locations, but it is there. But your principal has it in one handy dandy document. They give them to, and they have them because I had some folks last night that's already done it. All right, Randy, your hand was up first there.
Do we still have that town hall meeting tomorrow night?
Yeah.
Okay, I just was making sure.
Yep, we're going to do interviewing. I'm going to cover interviewing tomorrow night because it's that season, and a lot of y'all are going to start interviewing for jobs in the fall. And so I'm going to go over the 4 types of interviews tomorrow night and all the materials. Make sure, and I can do it in an hour. I know y'all don't believe me, but I can do it in an hour. But most important part of interviewing is knowing what kind of interview you're walking into. There are 4 distinct types, and they're not the same, and your answers aren't the same. It's not like you're telling a different story. But for example, when you do the 3rd level, when you're talking with school administrators, you can use all the jargon, acronyms. You can talk about MTSS and RTI and that. When you're doing the 2nd level interview, when you're doing parents, they'll just sit there and look at you with a dumb look on their face. They don't know any of that stuff. But what we're looking for is, can you communicate with civilians, with non-professional educators? The 1st level is going to be a data dive probably, or going to be a virtual in CMS, how you do those. I mean, there's a trick to all this stuff. There's a trick to, yes, Tanya, I do. We'll stay on after. Yeah, there are, when people say, I've got an interview tomorrow, can you help me? I get those calls every day or two. Which level is it? We need to know that, because we prep according to, and we have materials according to what level. If it's the 1st level, it may be a perceiver interview. It may be a data dive. It may be a thinking skills, a reasoning activity. Different districts have different ones that should, the 1st one is the cattle call, where they separate the wheat from the chaff. Are you a serious candidate? And then the second one's going to be a group one with civilians. Can you communicate with people outside of the org? The third one's going to be with professional educators, principal, maybe an assistant superintendent, and the fourth one's going to be with the superintendent or the area superintendent, because they're going to try to project as whether you're can be a principal or not. They don't like to hire APs that they can't project as they were hiring as principals, because you're wasting time and resources. Who's in Guilford? When Mo was superintendent there, he's running for state superintendent now. When Mo Green was superintendent there, even as big a district as Guilford, which is the third largest in the state, he interviewed every AP candidate, every one. That's almost unheard of, but he did. Now, most of like Jeffries in Charlotte Meck, most of the time the area superintendent does that, but Mo had area superintendents and he still interviewed every AP candidate. So your fourth level is going to be with the superintendent who will make a hiring decision. That's a different conversation as well. We don't talk about, bus routes and things. We talk about big ideas. Can you see the bigger picture? 21st century skills at that level. So you got to know, you got to be prepared. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow night. LaShonda, you had a question?
Just one quick question. When we were talking earlier, you stated to use North Carolina year 2022 for the report card. Would you advise us to do that if we have changed administrators since then?
Yes.
And the information is going to be different.
Yes.
Use that or okay.
That's why we resurvey the needs assessment, because as I said, the principal could have changed and it's 2 years old. We want to confirm that these are still problems. That's why we resurvey the same items. That's the whole purpose of that. Is that data? There's always the enemy of data is time, and so that's why we're going to collect our own right behind it here. We're going to use it as a starting point, but we're going to collect our own and we're going to work off of that. But we don't want to. There's well over 100 questions. We don't want to just give them a whole. We want 10 or less questions. The most important things in those 5 areas, no more than 2 per section, 1 or 2 per section, and we want that, and we're going to collect our own, and we're going to work off of that when we do our interviews. Because you're exactly right, LaShonda. Sometimes you've changed principles. Sometimes things have changed at your building. That data's 2 years old. That's why we're resurveying ourselves. It's a great point. All right. I think we're done for the evening. I appreciate your time as always, Tanya. I'll stay on with you. I'll stop the recording here. Everybody have a